Lottie took Rosie out for a stroll in the Esbecchia garden. The sun was strong, and she felt grateful for her broad-brimmed sun hat. Rosie walked slowly in the heat, and Lottie didn't hurry her. Instead, she used the time to reflect on the strange events of the morning. Who had poisoned Mrs. de Vere? Lady Harbottle was an obvious suspect, because Lottie had heard how annoyed she was about Mrs. de Vere's gossiping. But Benjamin Villiers was an obvious suspect too. Surely he'd had the best opportunity to put poison in Mrs. de Vere's tea. Lottie couldn't think what Mr. Villiers' motive could be. He'd dismissed the talk of the Pharaoh's curse as a joke, and yet it had clearly bothered him at the time. Was it likely he'd poisoned her because she'd teased him? Lottie decided not. Perhaps the culprit was someone she'd never met before. The police had told them there were over 500 guests in the hotel, so the chance was high it could have been someone she hadn't come across yet. There was also the possibility that Benjamin Villiers had been the intended target. Although Lottie had solved similar puzzles before, this case seemed unusually difficult. She encountered the young street hawker by the gnarled tree on her way back to the hotel. Rosie was keen to see him again, so Lottie allowed her to greet him. She admired the variety of colourful beaded necklaces he'd arranged neatly on a carpet over a trestled table. "Bad news about Mrs. de Vere, isn't it?" he said, patting the dog. "Did you know her?" "Not very well, but she lived at the hotel, so I knew who she was. She complained about my brother Ahmed once." "Why?" "He once had to leave the kitchen to clear up a spillage in the restaurant, and she complained he wasn't smartly dressed enough." "That wasn't very nice of her." "I heard she wasn't very nice. I have a friend who works on one of the cruise boats, and she was rude to him once. And one of Ahmed's friends works as a waiter at the Kursaal Music Hall. Apparently Mrs. de Vere said such bad things about the place that they lost customers." "Why did she do that?" "She had a disagreement with the club owner, Miss Omar." Lottie recalled Mrs. de Vere describing her club as disreputable and tawdry. "What did they disagree about?" she asked. "I don't know, but apparently Mrs. de Vere had been telling the guests at Shepherd's Hotel that they shouldn't go there. That's why Miss Omar has been visiting Shepherd's a lot recently. She's been trying to find more customers. Ahmed's friend says Miss Omar has been worrying about money and how to pay her staff. Apparently they're all wondering if the club will close. Ahmed's friend doesn't want to lose his job there. I wonder if Miss Omar poisoned Mrs. de Vere. It sounds like she had a motive."